UK and now in many countries, more than 600 science cafes. He has half of them. How many countries?
More than 40.
Okay, more than 40. Duncan Dallas worked previously at the BBC science production, and then he started there. He worked and interviewed famous people that hearing only their names. He met and talked to them. These are Richard Feynman, the physics Nobel laureate, and his wife, who is from his hometown, from Yorkshire, and Linnaeus Pauling, who is a twice Nobel laureate in physics and chemistry. Both were at Alta. We are very happy to have him to visit us here in Egypt. I have been meeting him over the past couple of years in various conferences and meetings in the US and in Europe. And I'm very pleased that he was able to stop by for a quick visit and to hold this science cafe and also to watch the lunar eclipse tomorrow. Mr. Ahmed Yusuf from Science, from IT Show, will have a fellow. So he will pose the leading question. Duncan is going to offer his input and answers, and maybe we can also afterwards open the floor for the audience to comment, to ask further a question, and then Mr. Ahmed will go again.
The greatest science and technology media present.
You don't want me to speak, you just want me to answer his question.
Sorry?
You just want me to answer his question.
Of course, and do all the commenting, all the input and everything, the engagement. But I think you would also cover, maybe we can begin by the introductory part that you gave earlier on campus, where there. So let us begin with the introductory part about the history of Science Cafe, how is it run, and the various versions that you have seen in different countries. And then we can go.
Can you hear me? No. Even if I'm listening to
I'll turn my recorder on.
well, when you say that there was an article in Nature on science and culture, when the Café Scientifique was described as a place where the price of a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, anyone can come to discuss scientific ideas and developments which are changing our lives. Right? So that was the kind of theory of it. So in a sense, one of the main questions is what's important about coffee, alcohol, discussion, non-academic venues in relation to the importance of scientific facts. Right? So that's one question you might ask. But one answer to this appeared in Science recently, about a year ago, in a review of books about science communication. I just quoted, "The foundation of a successful communication is listening to and respecting your audience." The reviewer suggests that scientists should be aware of the wisdom of Nelson Mandela, who was initially vilified by the public. But part of the quote from the Science is, scientists should learn from Mandela that to win people's minds, you must first get them to listen. And people will listen only if they are respected. Right? So that is the fundamental thing about the cafe. There is equal respect between scientists and the public. And that very much happens if you're in a cafe. You know, I'm not even standing up, I'm looking down at you, and all that kind of stuff. Here, chatting. So, the way that cafes work in England is you have people who come to the cafe and say, what would you like to listen to? You know, somebody says, oh, I've read something, or I would do something. And you can talk about anything from medicine, physics, chemistry, biology, anything like that. And if you get the appropriate subject, what I do is I go onto the university website and click down until I find somebody who might be studying. Give them a ring and say, would you come and talk to the cafe? And if they say no, I say, well, who else wants to? Who's your researcher, especially? You don't need professors and stuff like that. It's better to have people who are really working. And then they come and they talk for maybe 20 minutes. And then there is a break. People in Europe, they go and get a drink in the bar or something. And then they come back and ask questions and discuss. And the break is interesting because unlike in university where the speaker is talking and then the person beside them says, right, any questions? You think, oh, I didn't understand half of that, but if I ask a question, I'm going to dispute, so I'm going to shut up. But if you're in a cafe and you're queuing up for your drink, you say to the next person, do you understand what that guy said about this? And if you say, no, I didn't really understand much of it either, then I think, okay, I'll ask the question. So you have some such confidence. You just advertise it by, you get an email list or you have a website, or some people do it very spectacularly, but normally you can just do it by word of mouth or and the email list and kind of stuff like that. And so one of the key elements in a way is the mutual respect between the science and the audience. And perhaps that respect is partly because the scientist obviously has more knowledge than the individual, but the audience has wider knowledge in different ways. So the kind of questions that are asked are not just what exactly do you mean by this molecule doing this, but it can be who pays for you? What do you do in the morning? What do you work with? How many are in your group? What would happen when you do it? What difference would it make? Who's enthusiastic about should it be done? And partly one of the things about cafes is they are not a defense of science, right? You can invite a speaker, not defend it if you want to, but you could certainly get people in the audience saying, I think this is ridiculous that people are, that we, the taxpayer, are paying for your group to do this kind of thing. What do you think? So you get, if you're like, that's not always mutual respect, but at least it's kind of reasonable kind of understanding. And if you're in the audience, you don't just learn from the science, right? You learn from what happens in the discussion. You learn from, that was a really good question, or so on and so forth. And I never thought of that. And then you think, well, maybe actually the speaker's got to think on their feet and answer it, right? And they probably, may not have answered it before. And you suddenly begin to realize, is this a speaker that I really respect? Or is he or she avoiding the subject going around? But the speaker can say, sorry, I don't know the answer to that. You might find it on the website, or does anyone else here know, or anything like that. So it is not that the scientist is trying to be all-knowing and powerful and kind of so on and so forth. It is that he or she is saying, this is what I'm doing, and this is what people around me are thinking, and this is why I'm doing it, and so on. So that's the point of the discussion. And the importance of, if you like, of the cafe is that people enjoy coming to the cafe, even if they don't want to talk about science or anything. They're familiar with the cafe. It is not as though you are going to university, you have to take an exam, you have to learn something. You're in competition about how many marks you get and all that kind of thing. You're just there because you're interested in the evening. And if you're not interested, you can go in the middle of it. It doesn't matter. It's not as though you have to sit there all the time. And you're not joining a society or anything like that. And the other key thing is you don't really need money, right? The person who starts it, because let's say they can't start it, they go to a cafe and they say, we'll come on a Monday or a Tuesday night. Nobody ever comes to this cafe on a Monday or Tuesday night. So we'll bring people here. They will buy a coffee or a drink or something, they will do something, and they will. So they say, okay, let's do it. You don't pay any money to the speaker, ever, for a speaker. You pay their expenses. They come. And the only way, for instance, that we pay the expenses is I literally pass a hat and I say, you know, the speaker has come from, I don't know, 30 miles away, or it cost them £10, or so forth. So we need that money. And sometimes you might have to pay a little bit of money for the place that you're in as well. But you just tell people that. You say, it costs you money to come here. So, but you don't need that. You're not going for heavy funding. You're not doing anything like that. And you get, again, if you're organizing it, you get a response from the audience. Because, you know, Finnish speakers, you know, most people will go, they'll say, oh, we'll catch the bus, whatever. But others will hang around, and after maybe a drink and a bit of a talk, somebody will say, or more likely they'll say, we were talking about this tonight, why don't we talk next week or next month about something else, more ideas. So, and then usually maybe once a month. Now, the other interesting thing is when we started it, we got I don't know if you know the Oliver Sacks. Do you ever read any of his books? He's an American famous and I think he was about the third or fourth speaker that we had at the cafe. And I said to him, oh, I don't know what's going on. You know, because I just started it. I was interested because I read about Paris, the philosophy cafes in France. And really be interested in philosophy at all, so I thought, you know, the Humanitarian science. And why a lot of people are saying, oh, very interesting, blah, blah, blah. Why are you saying that? And he said, because what's happening is you're bringing science back into culture. And since then I thought, well, he knew what it was. And so that's the thing. But the interesting thing is that you bring the science into different cultures. So that what happens is that the cafes are different in virtually every culture and every. So, for instance, well, in England, just because I started with one speaker, that's one speaker. But in Denmark, it's 2. Italy, it's 3. France, it's 4. They're all disagreeing scientists. They've only got 2 minutes each to talk before the audience goes like that. You get problems in other cultures, for instance, One is, for instance, in Japan, where you're supposed to be respectful to old people. Right? So when the oldest person has talked, right, then you think, well, who can, how can I? So what they did was they have PowerPoint, and you use your mobile and you just text the question and it goes up on top. So they don't know who's done the question. Could be you, could be you, could be you, could be you. But the discussion goes on that way. So that's one sort of get-go. Another one, for instance, down in Uganda, is in what they call a malwa China, where they make this sort of tub beer, malwa. And when you go to the cafe, you have to buy a straw, big long straw, and sit around and in a big circle. And the local person, because the first cafe started there in English, but they didn't quite work. But he went to the malwa joint and said, look, we want to talk in the local language, because in Uganda there are 26 languages. And in the old days, if you were in the village or the community, you discussed everything around this village. But now, you don't discuss anything. You just drink and you watch television. And why don't we go back to what we did in the old days and discuss things? And so they said, yeah. And interestingly, they discussed extremely practical things about agriculture or bench things, kind of stuff like that. And unlike, if you like, many European cafes, which are slightly middle class and quite well educated, they talk about hands-on colliders and that kind of thing. So these things in Africa are exactly. And the other thing is that now what we do there is we do cafes in schools. We go to the kids in the school and say to them, what would you like to discuss? And they will say anything from black holes, aliens, to the science of love, to anything. They're kind of
Newton's first law.
The what?
Newton's first law.
No, that's not so much. But then they discuss. They get a speaker from university or from technology companies, because they're interested in talking about mobile phones, they're interested in talking about computers, they're interested in talking about robots. And so they will get people in on and they will talk, but not in the classroom. In classrooms and all. So you get out into the garden if you can. And there's the same kind of discussion. It's shorter, it's not as long as the other. But I think what is very interesting there about cafes on that part of Africa is because you're asking the kids, you're introducing the kids to the world in which they're going to grow up. They're going to grow up with computers, mobile phones, and kind of stuff. That's not how their parents were. Their parents were worried about HIV and so on and so forth. And kids are interested in other things, and they're going to have to talk to the Chinese and Americans and all that kind of stuff. And so on. So I think that's one of the things that happens in cafes in culture. So anyway, that's broadly what cafes are like, and because the cafes are so different in different cultures, that's how you learn. You don't learn, there's not a theory theory about cafes, there's not a formula about cafes. You start something and you say, hey, look, this is working here. You know about it, then you think, maybe I should try, maybe it should be more practical. Maybe it should be music at the start, like I said, there was in Japan, or so on. And so now I hope we're going to have a kind of monthly thing which we'll put on websites and send back to organisers, where maybe 2 or 3 organisers have said, look, there's something interesting happening this month, or it's happening, or we tried this, or so that you get some communication. Because actually there's not much communication between cafes. But so, you want to ask me a question?
Before, can we maybe take a pause for those who didn't order something to drink? You can also order something to eat. So please let us take a minute so that we can get our, because it will take them time to bring any food or any drinks. So please, because you have to be doing some drinking or eating, because this is a science cafe. So we have to observe the rules of the activity.
Yeah.
Why don't you try your Bloody Mary? It's not Bloody Mary.
No, it's not.
So it's a science hub, isn't it?
Yeah,
What about cyber cafe? No science cafe.
well, in these, there's a philosophy cafe, psychological cafe, economics cafe, all discussing different. I think that's just one of the sociological changes that people want to
Can I just ask you something?
Yeah.
I will need to leave pretty soon.
Yeah.
Just had a quick question. How do you usually announce the event, or how do you make sure you have a good turnout for the science cafe?
Well, you usually just ask people who come to give you their email, and you just put it on an email list.
Right.
And you can put a poster up at a cafe, or local library, or university, or school, whatever it is. And it depends how big. There's an article here about modern cafes. They're saying that one in Brooklyn got 600 people.
Oh wow!
Something between 30 and 50. Quite.
Yeah.
Or sometimes when it's a small number like this, it's very interesting. And you can do things in very small numbers. So, then, I was saying this, the cafe in Florence, and they use the internet, and not only that, there's video.
That's a goal.
Edit it. YouTube and something. But the interesting thing is, because they're Italian, and especially in Argentina. So it would be interesting if it started here. Because I get it done in Hungary.
May I ask the same question in a different way? Who organizes the music? It is the owner of the estate? Somebody else? Do they have a relationship? Is he continuous? I think I'm very interested about the organization, because Alaء invited me once to come here and do exactly what you were saying. But this means for me, he was the organizer, I was a speaker, and he has a certain relationship with the owner.
Right.
If this is the way it is happening in other countries,
Well, yes. Normally, for the organizer, the relationship with the country is very slick. You just say, okay, we've got another speaker on May the 7th. Is that okay? If they say yes, they just say we start at 8. That's the deal. Now, in some places, if they do it, for instance, in universities or art centres and stuff like that, there's often a closer relationship. Somebody's already in the art centre, somebody's in the university, and they're sort of doing things. Sometimes, for instance, saying in Iran, it is difficult because people, government is not interested in having public meetings. They're worried what you're going to talk about. The person who started in Iran had to sign a form with the person who owned the cafe saying, I will pay, if there's a riot, I will pay for all the damage done. And of course there was no riot. But you just got a small number of people, about this number, and then it got enlarged, and then of course there was a problem about do you bring women to those kind of meetings. But he brought in the students from the university because they came to the university and come to the cafe. And then, in fact, he asked the imam to talk to just and he said, who's paying for you to do this? Why are you doing it? Okay, we'll talk. I'm not going to talk to the cafe. You've got to come here to my office. Welcome to your office. So they came to his office and he talked. But after he had talked to them, and there was the questions and discussion as usual, he was much calmer, and everybody else was much calmer. If a man approves of it, that's okay. And then a couple of times later, he brought good scientists when he come from Tehran. He said, oh, can you come and talk to the cafe for an hour? He said, yes, I will. And then when that happened, he said, oh, so, you know, in some cultures, it's a kind of a problem. But in most cultures, it's not difficult to be more positive. You just, if you're interested in it, you just do, if this cafe doesn't do it, you go to the cafe across the road. You know, you say, well, most of the people I know in the city, so I'll try to see what and the encouraging thing is, if it works, then people say, oh, this is really nice, well done, well done. I've got a halo at the back of my head for 5 minutes. So it's not as though really as though you say this will push science would be interested in meeting some of these scientists or doctors, and I would be interested in talking to maybe a dozen people who would also be interested in and it's just that. It's just kind of way of thinking.
The question about the organizer, is he the one who organizes every month and in the same place or different places? Is it one person like you or different?
Well, if you can, I passed it on to two younger guys now because we've been doing it for 15 years.
To help or to take over?
Take over. That's enough for me.
You know, this is very, very interesting because Alaء, it must be that I have been doing that for 30 years. In a rural village, I have been inviting professors to give talks to the public and openly discussions about starting from new technology, renewable energy, computer information, and it is because there is one person and he is trusted by the so-called, I would say, not the people, but trusted also by the professor. I am going to invite Dr. Alaء. He trusts me that I give them orientation. For that small village, I have invited, and this was a surprise to everyone, Farouk Bas came to a small village to sit and discuss about the universe and what we are really talking about. And he didn't believe that he can do that. And he wouldn't have done it without trusting that he is talking to me and I am the one to organize it. So I think it really needs a sort of a public figure who would make the organization, or a convincing figure, and lead it. Because
yeah, it could be, but sometimes it's a group, it's just some friends who say, let's do it. Sometimes, I mean, I was saying, there's one in Indonesia, run by a woman, only 4 women, and he talks to them about helps them to work with that. The idea is that they can earn money at home, as it were, while they're looking after the kids and they're doing this kind of stuff. And of course, that is now passed on to now there are kids, and she's doing something with the kids as well. So, it's not so I think the cafes that are very unusual, most wonderful thing in the world. It is part of a social movement that's happening in the world. Science is becoming more important to people's lives, I think. And, for instance, there are, in the States, there have been some groups, a bit like yours, that have done things like that. And then they say, we'll call ourselves a cafe, or we'll join, or we'll send you an email and tell us what we're doing. So it's just that kind of thing. It's going on, but it's going on, if you like, in the outside world, not in the academic world, not in the world of science communication.
If I can just get one last question before I leave. Do the speakers or the scientists or the person invited, do they usually use any PowerPoints or props, or is it usually more of a casual, informal talk?
Well, when I was doing it, I tried to avoid using PowerPoint. A lot of people say, okay, you can use something, but only if you've got some pictures. Not 3 things to remember, and then 3 things to remember, and 3 things to remember. So yeah, you can do whatever you want. Some people do sort of practical things.
here's a setup.
They will have a kind of experiment thing. Say, what do you think
احنا بنعمل دروسي
they're talking about
ليه بقى؟
geology, so geophysics,
لا بره يا ماما
stuff like that. And actually, the other thing is just what I remember is almost all the science people who come have said, I felt extremely worried about doing this because I didn't know who was going to be there, I didn't know how clever they were. But actually, I enjoyed it. So there were some interesting questions, and I'm thinking maybe I could do a bit of this or a bit of that, you know, in terms of my own work. It's not they're doing something they don't like, and other people are enjoying it.
I will have to go. I really apologize for having to leave.
No, it's a science cafe. You do it whenever you want.
Let me just give you my card.
Okay, thanks a lot.
And thank you for coming.
That's it.
And I hope, yeah, we can be in contact. I'm quite interested in the idea of studying something similar to that.
Yeah,
So, all right. So can إن شاء الله.
شفت حاجة؟
لا
خد معاك حاجة
لا مش هلحق.
You know, there is
خد حاجة
a science cafe in Norway, so it's called
Please arrange for what?
musical
For the interview.
Or science or music.
بص خلينا احنا دلوقتي ان شاء الله يوم 8 5 4
theory of it.
Because if you sit in a lab, you don't feel the ambience, the circumstances. Tunes you to music will be so you are relaxing and listen and taste and learn at the same time.
هو في lecture from if you want to attend في ال AUC السبعة لا في ال campus from 7 it is posted at the Facebook page
With emotional impact.
from 7 to 10 تمام if you want to observe it from another place يعني after sunset
And then makes your right brain work.
from 8 to 10
Or maybe something.
خلاص أنا كويس أنا كنت خلاص أنا شكرا
They can
خلاص
unless we are quarks.
I'd like to
Is there a coffee machine?
yeah we can I can just by email I can make it also
Okay, go ahead.
I can make it
Make it now.
yeah we can take photos
What do you want? That's there's one about there's a very entertaining article which is written very recently
ابراهيم يحيى ومحمد سعيد
bioscience technology.
بس انا شايف ان نسيبها نخليها having the rest وكده
Coffee and its effect on brain.
الموضوع هيبقى complicated
You're gonna write about it, I guess. Yeah, sure. I don't know, are you interested in the schools in Uganda or you're interested more in
We might go there to be watched.
هو لا هي بس في رمز الجامعة سواء هيضطر ان هو يقول مثلا احنا ضروري كذا حتى مش محتاج عن كذا
So you think that the science can be introduced to public because we are a sort of
لو بس
we
لو بس
belong
نعرف
to certain vision of some branch of what about the general public?
بس تعرف
Do you think they are they pay
حد بس
attention
يرد
to
عشان
science?
انا
الجامعة دول جنب فندق is becoming more important in their lives.
Yes.
Just because they've got mobile phones, they've got computers, there's maybe climate change problems, food problems.
بس how will you enforce close coordination حد يبقى معاه
Might be a bit scared.
انا بقول يعني let us make it يعني it needs very
Do it in such a way.
coordination if you would like to go by the list لكن الاسهل ان هو في البروسيس after step لو انت عايز يعني انا ما اعتقدش انها وانت مش هتبقى موجود يعني المواضيع يعني ممكن تو رايت يعني لازم الموضوع يبقى في ناس واقفه
You joined Dr. Feynman? You joined Dr. Feynman?
Yes.
will not have
In Manhattan
force what
Project?
you have in mind.
A bit after that.
إلا لو
With Oppenheimer.
ابراهيم او محمد تتوثق معاهم وتديهم الليست.
What is your impression about the guy who really imagined that there is lots of space inside the atom and
هتلاقي ناس مش جايه في الميعاد
science of
you will end up being late يعني فهم هيخرجوا فانا شايف ان انت يعني شو waste your time
But he was very good. He was a very
قول بالحاجز يا جماعه
very
this first come first serve بس
yeah.
that's okay يعني let us not make the transportation take a lot of time ديها يعني ايه احنا مش عايزين نضيع الوقت عشان logistic.
I now go to my questions. Okay.
Okay.
What is forbidden in scientific? You ask. There is.
What is forbidden?
يبقى ده
Well,
يبقى لو في 10
not much, but I'll tell you something so very on. The person who is has to, in the very early days, when it started, there would be some guy would stand up and say, look, what you said was rubbish. I am a biologist, I did biology, and so on and so forth. And, you know, the person, the chairperson has got to say, okay, thanks very much for what you said. Let's move on to the next question, and so on and so forth.
There's no noise.
Make it clear that it's not about
خلاص يبقى نسقها يعني
your
مش ماشي
knowledge of who you are or anything like that. It's about what your comment is, what your question is, and that's all right. Let's go on. And, there was, you know, but that was just at the very beginning. Now that doesn't work. Now doesn't, because the audience is different. It's different. You know, young ones, men and women. You're picking questions. Just that.
بصراحة عارفة السبيشالست in green tech.
Green economy.
Or green economy, okay? Anyway. It is forbidden in scientific ethical secrets. Shisha like Egyptian cafes.
Only in Europe, because the cafes are insured so that people don't smoke. Insurance. So it's not about the audience, it's about the you can't smoke in a bar or
Recently, smoking is banned. It's like enclosed.
10 years ago. Yeah. But on the other hand, if you hold it here, you can, of course. I mean, there's no nobody's going to say you're doing the wrong thing. If that's what you do.
I want to by saying even in the discussion or in a meeting like this one, is it ethical that I would have my mobile phone on? That's the issue that I think it is the organizer or the people who are taking care that they can really have these issues stated before. Would you please, everybody, could put it silent? If you want to make a call or to answer your phone, could you please go out? This is also part of the education and the awareness. And I think it is part of the cafe because you are teaching people or at least reducing something. You see?
Maybe you should do it first. You know, if your phone rings, you just make a joke and laugh and say, ha ha ha, what you can do. You know, you don't have to sort of help.
So what else is forbidden? What else?
Somebody trying to dominate it, ask question after question after question after question. No, that's me. So sorry, let's move on.
Sticky work.
Yeah. Okay, why didn't have an association?
Pardon? Why don't you have an association? It's the cafes. They kind of you know, some start and stop. You know, if somebody moves somewhere else, or somebody hears something and they'll start off something on their own.
Lightweight connections.
That's why I'm trying to start this sort of communication, cafe communication thing. Because there are places you can find out. There are two big websites, one in Britain and one in America, and they've got many of they're trying to load on send but well, for instance, we did start a discussion 10 years ago, but
I think if you have an association, you can put the principles like national geographic, followers who can follow how to build this.
Build. That may well be right. That's not what I'm interested in. So I'm interested in that individuals who do it in their own way, and I learned that I think other people that not that you're just part of an organisation, association.
But the purpose what
How was making sure that you have made an order, or you have, if you would like
Could you leave before?
sandwich or anything?
Can I ask you a question? What is the worst question you ever heard in a science cafe? That was very embarrassing and very intimidating, and you wish it couldn't be raised.
That's the question you asked me.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, that's it.
First of all, it's smooth and wonderful and just juicy, right?
No, it's not. I mean, some of them are not all that clever, or not all that interesting, and it's really then up to the speaker to say, but I'm not sure about that one.
Okay.
So I can't say much.
Yeah.
I'm answer the second thing.
Yeah, it could relate to some dangerous topic.
Yeah.
Industrial security or political issue,
But there are
ethical issue, or
pretty controversial. In fact, there's somebody talking at the next one in Leeds about nuclear energy, about putting nuclear waste into parts of England. And he was saying he is objecting to the local people who have said, the local council people and things who have said, this waste cannot go there because it is too dangerous. So that'll be a very controversial meeting. There'll be loads of people there. This is it. So, we'll do that.
Could I tell you in the same way a question that I have learned a lot from when someone asked me a question. In a meeting in the village, I was talking about photovoltaic.
Like what?
Photovoltaic.
Oh yeah.
Physics of photovoltaic, solar cells. And this was fascinating to everyone at that time. I'm talking about the 70s. And the people will ask me, is what you are saying light from sun, is it light or the heat? And I was trying to explain that's really the light and not the heat, because even the heat is not worth it for the solar cell. And you know, one of the boys came to me and he said, Dr. Salah, you know, I got it from the light of the moon. And he did an experiment. The night before, it was a full moon like today, and he went on the top of the roof with the solar cell, and he could produce a million. So that's
scientific method.
And I didn't,
practical
and I tell you, I have been teaching in the university. I have never thought that it could be even experimented with light from the moon.
It's called solar
but you
cell.
know, this is really something that I think the value of the science to get the people to think rather than taking that.
Yeah, we had a local cafe where somebody was talking about the sense of birds. What birds know, what they feel, and all that kind of stuff. And what was interesting there, of course, was the audience knew a lot about birds, and they did things with birds themselves. So they said, I've done this, I've done that, why, and so on and so forth. So sometimes it can be very practical.
Rewarding. What was birds for?
Interesting. You're just talking about the admirable, practical.
Einstein said the most important thing is not which, because curiosity has three things.
Because what?
Curiosity has three things.
So, what is the most pleasant question that you wish?
Always smiling.
Not good at remembering questions.
Very good.
Yes, but sometimes I remember just thinking, gosh, I'm really glad I'm here. I would never have thought this evening would be that interesting. That's all. I remember the days. Back. Well, that's not, I mean, for instance, when I started with I didn't register the name or anything like that. So anyone can start anywhere in the world, or science cafe or scientific cafe. And why would you make it?
People like to gain science and money.
But who's going to gain the money?
The cafe.
The start is we can make a business model.
I really would like to answer this question. If I would really come and make the connection and make a program that every week or every month I'm getting such a high valued professors to talk about some scientific, and I make the arrangement as a promotion, and you have this hall full with dinner, everyone is paid for it. Who is taking the profit? So the place could even later on provide the sort of, doesn't mean money to be given to the speaker, but at least at the end, a nice present or a good dinner, yes, or he would have a dinner every day if you come. These are business models.
I would say no, because what, for instance, happens, yeah, in some places, sometimes go to about 30 miles away, and they just have a thing at the door and it says, if you want to put money in, put money in. And they put money in, and they have given us money to do stuff in Uganda, because that's what they want to do with the money. It's not that they want to make a profit, they want to give each other gifts or this and that. If there was, if they wanted to make a profit, it would be better to.
Okay, let me tell you. Sorry to take my question. Now, we have here in Egypt special experiments in culture, like Rish, like Zahrat al-Bustan in Cairo and outside Cairo. So this is when they gain host the celebrities of books, culture field. The coffee shop will have to continue the cycle of business, the life of business. So I understand that you want to have the value of the science and to have a charity also. I see your inner not inner feeling, but your idea inner. Okay, if we can ask. But what the problem is if scientific cafes will spread profitable, some none and some profit. What's the problem?
Well, I think what happens is that, for instance, I have to start a non-profit company because they
Non-profit company, non-profit organization.
Non-profit organization.
Company means they must have a profit.
No, it doesn't. Not anymore.
What's a non-profit organization?
There are companies with no profit.
But that was because we got some money from charity to start cafes. And so we had people set on in all over the universities, who are take on the company. And some universities get money from, let's say if you're working at a university, they'll say you should do cafe, you should do 5 things. One is to do cafes, one is to do something, this or that. And you can charge your expenses as it were for doing it. I don't think there are any as such. I don't think that there's any group that started for profit. There's just sometimes they lose money, sometimes they keep on.
There's no if you can lose money.
Well, it does sometimes. Sometimes only a few people can.
You gain people and you lose them.
But I think if you aim for the cafe to make a profit, people will be resentful. They wouldn't turn up. If you started it, right, I would start another cafe in the next street, which would have no profit, and it would cost less than yours, and I would get speakers and people.
The science is spread, no problem.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you have that option. Yes, exactly. So that's.
And what happens if business people come to this science cafe and they start talking about business and discussing again?
Well, some people do. For instance, sometimes what people do is they, let's say they get a solicitor or a business guy, and they say, we will give you some money or as long as an advertisement here which says so-and-so business. And that means that people don't have to come. They don't have to. Some people do. It doesn't last for all that long. Somebody would be interested in that.
But you have innovative ideas and controversial issues that makes a brainstorm. You are relaxing and you're talking to people without any potential. That means you can say your opinion, you can talk about your memories, your wishes or your dreams. It's a lightweight connection. You don't have to commit to business like business lunch or...
No, it is a work. Any relationship between the scientists.
Because the idea is this is for free. We can try and talk in a friendly way and we never met. That's what makes it really interesting.
And also, you can, when I pass the hat round and say, if there are students, I know the students have got no money, so I don't go.
Because you ask, I have one suggestion that you can make by Skype or by video conference the meetings between the scientific community and Europe and
We have done that. We have done that with a school in England, and they had a speaker and the kids, and it went down. I don't know if it was a Skype, but it went down on the computer to the school in Uganda, and they could ask questions as well. And so, yeah, you can do that. And that's why I think it's interesting. Like I say, if you do it here and you do it in Arab, you know, there are many countries around about who might pick it up.
It's a first visit for you to the whole Arab region?
I just, you know, just some things happening. Like just now, I'm on my way down to Japan because we're doing this conference in September. We're trying to encourage Africa to start.
Ask about Arab region, Gulf, North Africa.
Well, that would be good.
Country? Have you visited any other country in the Middle East?
No, no, so that would be interesting. I mean, let me tell you, there have been, we have done, we have done these. We have done one down to Palestine, working at, but then I find out cafes in Israel for 10 years. I didn't know anything about them.
There is a scientific cafe in Israel.
Yeah.
So I think the science festivals are a way to actually sustain science cafes, and we are trying to link them with various Arab science festivals.
Right.
There are maybe one or two in Saudi Arabia. There is one in Abu Dhabi, and ours here in Cairo, and I think there might be one in Tunisia, and we are trying to link them together. So having that would be a platform to promote science cafe among various countries.
You had one in Abu Dhabi, we make a big profit.
Big profit. I have a question.
Yeah, it's not a new question, but I'd like to comment on his question. I mean, why don't we make a science cafe, a cafe and constant place, make and we can say make discussions from science and science have a constant place to came if they want to make a discussion about a specific point in science. Is the science cafe able to get them and it's a constant place for them to discuss about the point of view and become profitable too. Why not?
Well, there has been the things called science shows. They were about 15 or more years old. And there are now things called science centers. I mean, there's one in Oxford, so on and so forth. And they are like that, but you need money. You need money for the place, you need money to run it, you need
So business
for
plan.
7 days a week.
And then when it comes to this, people would ask, should we make it a science place or just another coffee shop? So you just need a businessman, somebody with money. You just need if you have the money, you can begin it. So it just comes down to somebody who has the money who can do it.
I mean, it can attract the young science and young ones who interest about science to come discuss like cell culture. Sure. It's collect people together have the same idea. I mean, the science can
it would come down. Will that be enough to pay your bill, to be able to pay the rent of the place?
Well, spread the idea of science in our country that you don't have idea of science.
It's a good project that needs somebody to
can have
actually sponsor it.
we can work there and have a sponsor for it.
You need also in schools, you know, if you're going to do it in school, it's much better to have somebody who's 2 or 3 days a week, be able to go down to the school and talk to the kids. The teachers can't all do it themselves. They will help. But that needs money. And in fact, we've got money to Uganda to do that. And that money's going to run out.
Well, that's the questions before. amazing stories you heard about scientific cafes?
Well, they just kind of, for instance, I got to write a chapter of a book on science communication that's in Asia Pacific, and I went on YouTube, and on YouTube you can see the Kazakhstan cafe talking about, and then I find there's another one about coffee. There's this one in New Zealand, and so on and so forth. So it's not. And then when I was in America almost last year, and they said suddenly the cafes have risen in numbers. There's now almost 200. So there are these things that happen, and I just sort of click and think, look, I never knew that. That's kind of so amazing. And that story about one in Brooklyn, in New York, 600 people, so on and so forth. There are these events that kind of happen. And that's why I think cafe communication is really good to not just me to hear it, but just to email everybody, and then they can put it on your local website,
I have a nice time to you,
okay,
and all of you, and we inshallah are looking to see you again in Cairo Science Festival and in Egypt and our show, party show.
I hope you'll be a millionaire by the
We are
next time.
non-profit.
To meet the Science Cafe
Yeah.
business.